Welcome to my video on strategies for synthesis. Let's first take a look at what is synthesis. Synthesis is a mashup of ideas and perspectives to establish connections between sources as a way for you to create inferences from your sources and develop your own ideas. One way to think about your sources is to imagine each one as an author sitting around a table discussing and debating ideas. Let's eavesdrop on this discussion.
If you could go back in time and change one moment in history, what would you do? Is anybody not going to say Hitler?
Well, there's been the conversation, right? If you went back, would you kill baby Hitler? Because you're still technically killing a baby, and also you don't have the knowledge if someone else would be in his position, and would they be far worse?
That's the thing.
You never know.
Although it would be hard to be worse than Hitler.
There have been a lot of people who are worse than Hitler.
I just
Pol
think
Pot. I would say Stalin.
where we are now as a society, as a people, as Earthlings, I don't know. We're in a place where we've learned everything from. Well, we share this Earth. We're Earthlings. We've learned everything we've learned. Everything we are now is due to the things that have happened in our.
I'm Meg Turney.
I'm Philip DeFranco.
I'm Steve Zaragoza.
The first thing you want to do is summarize, paraphrase, and or quote these three sources. Phil first asked if you killed baby Hitler, would there be someone worse? He then states that it would be hard to be worse than Hitler. Meg disagrees with Phil, stating that there are a lot of people who have been worse than Hitler. Steve adds that who we are today is based on our cumulative prior experiences. Alright, so that's the first step to synthesizing. You read your sources and summarize what they have to say. Now we're not quite synthesizing yet, that's summarizing. When novice writers are asked to do a synthesis, they usually stop at the summarization stage. The next step is to join that conversation. Imagine that you were the fourth person at that table. What are the connections between what Phil, Meg, and Steve had to say? How would you categorize their responses? What do you think? Would you agree, disagree, or expand upon their viewpoints? Engaging with those questions after you summarize is the beginning of synthesis. When synthesizing sources, you need to consider the following. First, think about the stage time you want to give each source. When you're summarizing a source, it's in the spotlight. So how long should it be in the spotlight? Why is it in the spotlight? How does it connect to other pieces of evidence and information in your paper or project? You want to think about your target audience and what the audience needs to know about the source, what the audience values when writers integrate sources into their writing, and what the audience will think about the currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose of that source. Think about your purpose and goals with using that source. Is it to provide breadth to illustrate that you're familiar with the literature in your field? Or is it to persuade your audience? When synthesizing sources, you need to determine your stance or position. In other words, imagine if you were at a UN discussion on global warming and you just heard a spectrum of views on humans' role in the problem. What seat would you take? And then you want to think about the genre, which can shape the way you use your sources. For instance, a literature review is going to have an in-depth synthesis of dozens of sources, whereas a newspaper article would have fewer than 12 sources, and a college essay tends to have about 6 to 10 sources. In sum, when thinking about synthesis, you need to think about the rhetorical situation. And last, I want to conclude this video by talking about a strategy that will help you organize your synthesis early on in the process. I always start by grouping my source summaries. You can print them out and lay them on a table. I first ask myself, what ideas do they share? I write down in one circle those ideas. The ideas may be the same or they may complement each other. I then ask, in what ways are their ideas different? What are the opposing views? On the table that I'm working with, then I place the sources on sort of separate ends of the table. I then ask whether the sources are from the same discipline. Some audiences will look down upon research that is all over the place. When students do research, they rarely investigate into the writer's disciplinary background. This is important because it determines the writer's methodologies, theories, and value system. For instance, does the writer believe in computer analysis to make sense of the world, or does the writer value in-depth interviews? If you're writing a paper that relies on computer analysis for computer scientists, and you include an interview about a user's feelings, then that audience may discredit you as an authority because you use a type of evidence they don't value. And once again, how you group these sources depends on the rhetorical situation. Alright, so let's quickly review. First, synthesis is a mashup of ideas and perspectives. It establishes connections between sources, allows you to create inferences from sources and develop your own ideas. You want to imagine that you're the fourth person joining this conversation. Use the they say, I say sentence frame to organize your synthesis, as well as group your sources. And all in all, don't forget to consider the rhetorical situation when synthesizing sources. This concludes this video lesson on strategies for synthesis.